Good evening, namaste, or adab. Aristotle once said, to write well, express yourself like common people, but think like a wise man. And today, in this anniversary special episode of Conversations Unplugged, we have with us a wise and witty man who, through his books, through his golden words, and through his humble gestures, has won innumerable hearts. He dons many hats. He's an author, an entrepreneur, a voiceover artist, a magician, a cricket commentator, a great friend, and a wonderful human being. Let's welcome Mr. Neelesh Kulkarni, a very renowned and respected name in the world of writing. Good evening, sir. Welcome to our show.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Starting with Aristotle is so heavy. I'll have to measure up to the opening completely. That makes me nervous.
You're already there in that league, sir, and we
Ah,
respect you a lot, and we really look forward to you whenever your book comes, whenever you are there at any podcast or at any event, because we really want to listen to you all the time
thank you so
throughout
much.
the year.
Thank you
We
so
want
much.
to listen to
I'll try to speak throughout the year, except the times I sleep.
you. Of course. So, sir, it's really a great honor for us that you have given us
Thank you
this
very
time and you have graced our platform, and especially when it is the anniversary special episode. So, thank
much.
you so much for making it so special for us. And it's a long journey. We have, covered 4 years of Story Scrapers here in December this year. We'll be covering that 4 years. And to have you here on our show, it's actually a celebration for us today. So thank you so much for that. And you have been associated for so long with us, with our page, and you've been generous enough to send so many guests to our platform. And you also devoted so much of time and energy to us. So thank you so much for that first.
That's why, Shweta, it's like a homecoming. I mean, when I first came to this platform 2.5 years ago, that's when my
Yes.
first book had just gone out. So this must have been one of the first few appearances on social media that I had done. And from there to now, over 2.5 years, it's been a journey. Coming back after a long gap, it seems like I was here just yesterday, and there I am all over again. So thanks for having me over.
Thank you, sir. It's our pleasure completely. And talking about the podcast which we did 2.5 years back, it was about your first book, Footsteps of Rama
That's right.
Travels with the Ramayana.
That's
And
right.
congratulations for its huge success. It's been
Thank
translated
you.
into Hindi, Gujarati, and Marathi, and it also won the FICCI Best Non-Fiction Book of the Year award. So
Yes, it did.
congratulations for that.
I'm
I'm
blessed.
sure it's
Thank
been
you.
a wonderful journey, but we really
Super.
want to know more about it. So please share how have been, writing that book, this starting when you thought of writing the book and getting the award and till now, how has been this journey through?
Honestly, my journey as an author has been mixed with my journey as a person and the all the other things that I do. So I think it would be only fair that I talk of all of them together. As an author, yes, I this book was published in May 21. And 2 years before that, we had started the process of traveling for it. So, in a way, you can say that I have been involved in the universe of books and writing from almost 2018 or 2019, rather late in life, but all the same, better late than never. So,
Yeah.
from then, when the first book came out, I really didn't know what to expect, what to make of it. I mean, one quite didn't know what happened when a book came out, what was the feel. And I was also denied the pleasure of a launch, formal launch, because that's just after the book released, COVID hit. And so for a
Okay.
couple of months, there was complete lockdown. No bookstores were open. Books were not moving out. But all the same, we didn't know what to expect. So over time, one realized that there are such things as podcasts, there are such things as Facebook Lives. Then you got to post on social media. That whole awareness started coming up about books. And
Right.
when my second book came out, then my third came out, and then now that my fourth came out, it's been a different world altogether. So the second book came out in the same year, that is in November 21. And that was a book called Where the Gods Dwell with Westland Books, in which I contributed one of the sections. Between then and the third book, which came out in November 24, there was a huge gap.
Okay.
Huge gap primarily because I wrote a book on called Akashvani, A Century of Stories, which did not get published at that time for one reason or the other. and it got
Hmm.
pushed on to February. So there was a huge gap. And after that, I came on with the latest book, which we are going to talk about today, Uprising, the Liberation of Dadra and Nagar Haveli. And this was launched in 27th August, on 27th August 24. Of course, you were there because to let everybody know, Shweta was kind enough to host that event, which was wonderful and very smoothly done.
Thank
So
you.
as an author, I've traveled a lot. I've written 4 books. My fifth published 4 books. The fifth one is going to come out in the month of February. That is the book on Akashwani with HarperCollins. And then I have 3 more books to deliver with Westland by the end of 25. So it's going to be a busy period. Sometimes I get the feeling that I've actually taken on more than I could chew. And writing so many books at such a fast pace is actually taking a toll of me. But it's fun because when you surf on a sea, when the waves are up, that is when you can actually ride the wave. If you wait for the wave to subside, then nothing happens. So if there is a
Yeah.
wave and I'm going to ride it, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm doing it properly. What has happened on the uh, partly you can say the minus side is that many things have gone out of my life because now books are the focus. Like for instance, I used to read between 30 and 40, 45 books per year. Now it's down to just 5 because there's just no time to read besides what I'm reading for researching my book. So that I don't count as reading. That is work. That's for a specific purpose. Recreational reading has gone down to 4 or 5 at best. They've I used to be very finicky about having a 5.5 day week. Now it's a 7 day week because Sundays also I write. Saturdays I write, Sundays I write. So in a way, certain parts of my life have become compromised, but certain parts have become richer. Because if I had stayed in that same segment and that same style of my life, I would not have been exposed to so many new things which I was exposed to because I'm writing on those topics. The
Yeah.
liberation of Dadra and Nagar Haveli, for instance, or the rich history of All India Radio, or the travels of Ram. Now, these are things into which I would not have had any exposure had I not got into the writing space. And of course, there is the big advantage that one has added to one's friend list, the genuine friend list, by multiple times. I mean, there was a time when the first time I came to Chandigarh for a literature festival, that was my first lit fest. When I went into the place where the accommodation was provided, I didn't even know the name of the person who had booked it. So, so when they said, आपकी accommodation किसने book किया? तो पता नहीं किसने किया देख लो होगा कहीं that way. So मतलब I didn't know there anybody there at all. I didn't even know a name. And now it has come to a situation when we meet our friends in Delhi. Now the first question they asked is, "आप चंडीगढ़ से कब आए?" You know, knowing fully well that almost every month I and Sarita go to Chandigarh for something or the other. So they always ask us, "Chandigarh कब जा रहे हो? Chandigarh से कब आए?" So like one has added to a close circle of friends immensely as a result of this journey. And even if I don't write anything after writing the books that I am contracted for, I'll be very happy because my friend list has multiplied. And I
Yeah.
do not mean friend list as in the social media uh, avatar of it, but friend list as in a list of close friends who I value and cherish.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because you give so much of importance to friendship and relationships. So that is what you're getting back also in return. So you have just mentioned about all your books. You have just mentioned about your books, travelogue, and also you have written a magic book for the children.
Yes,
Then
yes,
your book on the All India Radio. Then you are
yes,
writing the book on the organizational history also. So all
yes.
the topics are very different from each other.
Yeah.
So what made you choose such a wide variety of topics, and what comes to your mind when you decide of writing a book, and how do you decide the topics for the book?
Honestly, it is not a conscious process of decision making. I mean, a story happens to me, I hear it, I like it, I decide to write about it. What I have not done is that I have not closed myself to any genre or any category. Normally, what
Right.
happens is that somebody would come to you and say, "Would you write a romance?" One would normally say, "No, no, I am a writer of non-fiction or mythology or travel, and I'm not going to write this." So I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting that I'm going to write a romance. I mean, my wife would be very unhappy if I decided to write it because she would ask me, "How did I know so much about it?" So I'm not going to write a romance for sure. However, I've not shut myself to any category. So when a story
Right.
happens to me, it comes in front of me. I don't say no to it. I explore it. And in a way, it has led me in strange directions. For instance, I'm writing a book on 100 years of Delhi University. That's my alma mater. And that's where I've studied all my life. And when the friends suggested कि इसके ऊपर एक book लिखनी चाहिए, there is no book on it. Would you be
Mhm.
interested? I immediately said yes because the topic appealed to me. So I don't make a conscious choice. The stories are all over the environment, and one story just happens to me, I just say yes to it and go ahead with it. But I've benefited, because had I stuck to only one genre, I would have probably been only knowledgeable about that. Now, by shifting topics and shifting emphasis from time to time, my personal growth has been massive. Professionally, it
Yeah.
is not very good, as my friend Anish Chandy, who represents me, tells me that when you go from one category to another, every time you have to build a fresh audience and you have to work much a fresh readership, and therefore you have to work much harder than if you had been with the same readership. For instance, if I had continued to write travel and mythology mixtures or travel and culture mixtures, the existing audience would have lapped it up. Now there may be people in my readers in my circle of readership who only want to read about Indian culture or mythology. So when I come up with a book on independence, or when I come with a book on Akashvani, they'll not read it. I'll have to create a fresh audience. But that's all right. That's the cost I pay for my own stimulation and my own growth. So I'm happy doing this.
Yeah, but I just want to add one thing to it. Like, we always connect with the author also. So once that connection is made, and once you start understanding the author, the style of his writing, then we connect with the author also. Whatever genre he's writing, that doesn't matter at that time. It doesn't make any difference, because we connect with the author and we know that whatever he's going to write, we are going to understand it and we are going to like it, because we connect with the style. So that is
True.
also
True.
there. Like,
Yeah,
apart from
one the style, and then you become also assured of the fact that if he's going to write something which is going to be of interest. So
yeah, yeah,
that's a blessing. That's a blessing. That has been
yeah.
happening. Yes.
So what do you feel that what are your strengths as an author?
Uh, one strength which I have cultivated for myself, not as an author but as an individual from very younger days, is that I like to research in depth whatever I do. So I do not take anything lightly. Given a job, as a person by temperament, I will not just put in something and just send it out like that. I would like to research, know everything about it, so that if anybody was ever to ask me a question about what I have written, I should not be found to be wanting. So I research a lot. And I do not believe that research only means Googling it or going on ChatGPT and finding out sources. It does not
Hmm.
only mean reading. Research also means authenticating it on the ground. That is why for Footsteps of Ram, I and Vikrant with our spouses, we traveled for 15 months on that route. That is why we
Yes,
could bring that authenticity into the writing. The
right.
authenticity comes when you have depth. So it is not as if everything that you study is written, but a small
Hmm.
percentage of it actually gets written. But the fact remains that that small percentage becomes more authentic, more genuine, because you know so much more about it, which is actually below the surface. So research is one strength which I have, and the second, I don't know if it's a strength, but yes, that's me. That I tend to write the way I speak. I do not write long sentences or
Yes.
use complicated words. I tend to make it visual in the sense that it's as if I was describing it. So the greatest compliment I get is when I meet a person who has read my book but not talked to me. So that person talks to me and says, "अरे आप जैसे बोल रहे हो ना किताब में ऐसे ही लिखा था." That is the style you followed. So I take
Yeah.
that as a compliment. So it has to be conversational for me. Everything that I write, even a book on the freedom struggle like the one we are talking about now, is conversational. It's as if something is happening before you. So it is my style of writing is very visual, and I quite cherish that. And I like to write that way, because in case the person who's reading the book is able to visualize the scene exactly the way I wanted to do it, then that means I've
That's,
achieved my purpose. So I
yeah.
research a lot, and I write in a very visual style, so that the scene comes alive for the person.
And it
That's
and it
that's what
gives
I
a
think.
very smooth flow also to the reading as well. So when you're reading it, like, it's not that you have read, 4 or 5 chapters and then you just shut it down. Okay, I'll read it some other day. It's a smooth flow. You keep on
I
reading it till you reach the end.
A part of it is probably because I've got some very good editors who keep working on the script along with me, because you cannot actually underrate the power of the editor, who actually
Yeah,
contributes much more, but being behind the scenes like a film director doesn't actually come into the front. So part of it
yeah,
is also due to the kind of help I've been getting from my editors with HarperCollins and Westland now. But yes, structure is important. And another compliment that I cherish at times is people saying, "Okay, I picked up the book at night and finished it by the morning." So that actually goes to show what kind of thing you had. I got that compliment a few times on this book also. रात को पढ़ना शुरू किया था. I thought I'll read 2 chapters or 3 chapters, and I didn't stop till I finished it. So For a non-fiction book, that's a big compliment.
Yeah, indeed, it's a very, very unique topic that you have taken up with this book. So I want to come up to this book now. Let's
Yeah,
talk a little more about the book and let's make our audience also know more about what is written there in the book. So talking about the uprising liberation of Dadra and Nagar Haveli, you told us that it's the only successful armed struggle in the history of the Indian freedom movement.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
what is it exactly and what exactly happened? So, please do tell us about that.
See, this story is based in 1954. The word story is incorrect because it is not story. It is a real narrative. Not a single
Actually,
word in the book is taken from imagination. Everything has actually happened, and it has been written and it has been verified on the ground. Okay,
yeah.
so this is a story about a few young men in Pune and a few young men in Goa, numbering about 20 or 25, who decided that because the government of India was not doing much to drive out the Portuguese from the country, after all, the British had gone, the French had gone, all the states like Hyderabad, Kashmir, Junagadh had merged into the country, but nothing was being done for various political reasons to drive out the Portuguese. So these people decided that they would take it upon themselves to drive the Portuguese out of Goa, Daman, Diu, Dadra and Nagar Haveli, starting with Dadra and Nagar Haveli. So this is a story of how 20, 22 odd young men with no resources available with them, neither money nor any military training, nor any governmental support, nor any arms and ammunition, took up arms, attacked the territories of Dadra and Nagar Haveli, and beating back more than 375 fully armed soldiers, liberated the area and made it independent. So it's not about Dadra and Nagar Haveli alone. It is about bravery. It is about raw courage in the face of adversity, in the face of unsurmountable odds, and it is about patriotism and nationalism and your desire to do something for your country, which is the only thing that propelled them. Otherwise, they had
Yeah.
nothing going for them. कहाँ 20-22 जिनके पास कोई ट्रेनिंग नहीं, कोई बंदूक नहीं, पिस्तौल नहीं, पैसा नहीं, and they dream of attacking more than 300 soldiers, and they beat them
Hmm.
back over a period of hardly what 15 days. So this is an amazing story, and I think this is a story which had not been written before, so it was just waiting to be told, and I consider it a blessing from the Lord that I was made the instrument of bringing it before people. It's a blessing. There's no way it could have happened otherwise.
Yeah, it's a blessing for you and awakening for us as well. Because even staying there in India for so many years, no one knew about this history. This
Yeah,
part of the history, we never knew about it. We just knew
true.
about the main freedom fight that happened, and nobody
Yeah,
was aware of this thing. So, thanks to you for bringing this in front of all of us and making us aware of the history of India also. Like, there are so many facets to the history of India which we are just
true,
not aware of.
true,
So,
true.
like you earlier also said that you need sources to authenticate the thing that, okay, this happened and this is how it happened, and all the resources that you use that.
Yeah.
So, can you
Yeah.
tell us about that also? That how, and what were the sources that you used to authenticate it?
Honestly, I had the good fortune of being able to talk to a few people who participated in the struggle. So I
Okay.
had very authentic first person accounts. So those
Yeah.
who went into war, they were 22 to, at best they were 29, and then there were 100 casuals who had come in. We'll talk about this later. But out of those entire 100 casuals and 22, 23, 29 dedicated people, when I started researching the book, there were only 16 alive because they were
Hmm.
all in their 80s and 90s. When
Right.
I started talking to them, by the time I finished the book, there were only three or four, and at least two of them were invited for the launch. And as you were aware, Shweta, one of them actually expired 3 days before the launch, and there was only
Hmm.
one left who came and talked to us. That uncle talked to us, so he's more like a family head now for me. So I had the good fortune of talking to people. I had the good fortune of being given original documents by them. For instance, if you observe in the book, there are some maps of Dadra and Nagar Haveli which have been hand drawn, which they have
Yes.
drawn because they wanted to get from one point to the other, and they had marked out the rivers and the police stations and everything, and the places where the roads were going. Now I had access to those maps also, so I had access to a lot of original documents, to a lot of scribbled personal notes, to books published by these very people, and I had access. Then I subsequently went into the government records and got a lot of government documents of that point of time. I got a lot of souvenirs and articles that were printed, and I got a lot of newspaper cuttings.
Right.
Plus, there were some court proceedings for which I got a big bunch of court proceeding notes. So these were
Okay.
all the documents available to me. So net result of that has been that of the 60,000, 65,000 odd words that are written, in each of them there are 274 citations. I mean, the story
Hmm.
is so amazing. 22, 20 plus people driving out 400 people from one place, that it would be, anybody would think that it is imaginary. It has just been made up as a work of fiction. So in order to give the story its credit and its weight, I have made sure that there is a citation for everything that is actually said. So there are 274 citations in the book. And out of those citations, only about 15 or 20 are conversations, where I mentioned in conversation with such and such. All the
Right.
others are from printed sources, from published sources. So almost
Mm-hmm.
everything that is there in the book is there in some form or the other. So my role has only been to put it together into a linear narrative and make a story out of it. So the story existed. It existed in bits and pieces scattered over Silvassa and Goa and Pune and everywhere else. I was given the responsibility of actually putting it together, and that's what I was able to do. So it is an authentic source which I have verified from multiple places. I have verified. If you come to my house, ever see the book rack, there's such a huge stack of books which only pertain to this topic, which were given to
Right.
me by various people. And at times, people have been so generous that there was one Mr. Prabhakar Vaidya who fought in this. Now, his daughter gave me the only available copy of the memoirs that he had written. People were so nice.
Right.
There's no other copy. She has it with her.
Wonderful.
It's available with me. It was a tattered copy which I had to really preserve and bind together to ensure that it remains in good shape. So people have been kind to me, and they have parted with a lot of documents for my perusal, which I use for authenticating the story, besides the real stories on the ground.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And the story is set up in 1954. It was
Right.
actually free India at that time. So,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
was the political situation in India at that time?
The political situation was that India had become free in 1947 from the British. At that point of time, Hyderabad, Junagadh, and Kashmir had not merged with the Indian Union. This for after by 48, end of 48, this merger had taken place.
Okay.
Hyderabad, by police action, the Maharaja of Kashmir signed the accession when the Pakistani Qabilis, the army dressed as tribals, came in, and the Junagadh Nawab fled. There was an election, and it was annexed. The French were there in Pondicherry and various small Chandarnagar and other places. They also went by negotiation. So the situation, as at the beginning of 1954, was that there was the Indian Union and there was the Portuguese controlled area. So the
Okay.
Portuguese controlled area was Goa, Daman, Diu, Dadra, and Nagar Haveli. Out of
Nagara.
which Goa, Daman, and Diu were ports. They had access to the sea. Dadra and Nagar Haveli was landlocked. It is even now 35 kilometers from Daman, where there is a territory of Gujarat, which for that time we will say that Daman was Portuguese, Dadra Nagar Haveli was Portuguese, and running between them was 35 kilometers of Indian territory, separating the two. So this is the situation as it existed, and one of the reasons why the volunteers who participated in the uprising decided to attack only Dadra Nagar Haveli first was because they were weak and they wanted to attack the smallest area first. And Dadra Nagar Haveli was surrounded by India. So the possibility of reinforcement of the Portuguese coming from sea was limited. Therefore, they decided to do this first. And their plans were to go on to attack Daman, attack Diu, and attack Goa also. However, that did not work out for various reasons. But anyway, their contribution still cannot be held to be small, because it is
Yeah.
because they liberated Dadra and Nagar Haveli that the government of India in 1961 finally liberated Goa, Daman, and Diu. Otherwise, we would have seen these areas under Portuguese occupation even now. That is the situation as it stayed.
So these 20, 25 people who fought there at that time, who were they?
Mm.
They were the natives of these particular places only. They were staying over there. And as you said earlier, they didn't have any resources. They had
Mm.
nothing,
That's
no
right.
backing was there.
Yeah, yeah,
So how did they manage
absolutely.
to do that?
Oh, it is only perseverance. I mean, it is one thing to be able to plan everything on the spot and say, "Ki, ye available hoga, this is what we have. So let us bid on
Right.
it and make a plan." It is another to say
Hmm.
that I have nothing, but I want to do it. Therefore, I shall find a way of finding those things which are required for this. And these people, mind you, the story started from a couple of 10 or 12 boys in Pune. And I use the word boys with great responsibility because they were all in the age group of 18 to 23. The oldest was
Okay.
probably 27 or 28. So it
Mm-hmm.
started with these group of boys in Pune who decided that since the government was not sending its armies to throw out the Portuguese, they would do it themselves. At that point of time, their resource base was zero. So I think it's the determination. What caught the attention or what got me really involved in the story was their determination. Their feeling कि ये करना है तो करना है. कैसे करना है we'll figure out later. But
Yeah,
right now the decision is we have to do it and we must do it because nobody else is doing it. Therefore we can do it. They could very easily have said, "भाई सरकार नहीं कर रही तो हम क्या कर सकते हैं?" We
absolutely.
often we often go into such negativity, but
Yeah.
they didn't do that. They decided कि करना है तो करना है, ये होना है, तो हमारी भी जिम्मेवारी है. Because their feeling was कि हम हर 15 अगस्त को we celebrate Independence Day. What right do we have to celebrate it? If so many thousand, so many lakh people out of our country, our countrymen, are still under foreign domination. They thought they
Right.
had no moral right to celebrate Independence Day. So therefore they said every citizen of India has to be an Indian and not under Portuguese or any other occupation. Only then the country will be free. So this motivation spurred them on. And they started on the exercise of arranging resources to ensure that this particular uprising happened.
Yeah. And you mentioned that it was an armed struggle. So how did they
Yes.
manage to get the arms?
But before the arms, there was the question of where to get the money to buy the arms from.
Yeah,
Arms was another question altogether. The first question was where to get the money from that. So
yeah.
they were from very ordinary families. They were from lower middle class families, middle class
There was
families.
one story of Lata Mangeshkar ji also providing some funds and some
That's
help to
precisely.
them. So tell us
Yeah, yeah,
about
yeah.
that story also.
Yeah, yeah, precisely. I was coming to that. So they were, like they had talked to their relatives, talked to friends, tried to raise funds. But from a normal middle class family, how much money can you raise for something like an armed struggle? It's ruled out. They didn't have the finances. They could not go
Right.
public with it because it would have come to the attention of the government and the government would have intervened and stopped them. So when they had lost all hope of raising funds, one of them suggested that they go to Lata Mangeshkar ji. And the
Okay.
reason for suggesting was that his name is Sudhir Phadke. He is subsequently got a Padma Shri, and he was a music director in the Marathi film industry. He gave some beautiful music in the Hindi film industry also. So at that time, he was at the start of his career. And he suggested कि कुछ नहीं हो रहा तो लता दीदी से पूछ के देख लेते हैं. Therefore, they went to Lata Mangeshkar ji and
Right.
they told her the whole story. And Baba Saheb Purandare, who was one of the participants, he was a historian, died a year and a half back at the age of 100 and got a Padma Vibhushan. He was that level of historian. Now, he told me the story and he said that when they went to Lataji and told her that this is what they want to do, she sat with a neutral face. They didn't gauge her emotions from that. But when they
Mm-hmm.
thought that she was not responding and got up to leave, they found tears were trickling down her cheeks
Yeah.
because that's the reason for that was that she belongs to a place where there's a Mangeshi temple from
Okay.
which they derived the name of Mangeshkar. And
Right.
that was under Portuguese occupation in Goa. And the Portuguese were stopping people from entering and exiting. So she was emotionally in a state of turbulence for this. So she said, पुर्तगालियों के खिलाफ आप कुछ भी करोगे तो आपकी मदद करना मैं अपने मंगेश की सेवा समझती हूँ.
That's
ये she
wonderful.
agreed to do it. And she and
Yeah.
Mohammed Rafi then organized a concert in Pune. And the proceeds of the concert were given to these people for financing the uprising. That's the story behind it. Then, of course, there's
Great.
a question of where to get arms from. That's what the
Yeah.
original question was. But I digressed. I'm sorry. So the sources of arms were you had to get them from the black market. You could not get them from. I mean, you don't go to a shop and say, "Bhaiya, ek rifle or teen pistoles de do." Where do you get it from? So
Yeah.
one of the sources was Goa itself, where black market arms were available. But that was risky because they would have to be smuggled across the international border. After the Portuguese India border was the Goa border at that point of time.
Right.
So they bought them from Hyderabad. How the weapons came to be in Hyderabad is another long story, which is given in detail in the book, and we leave it for the readers to read there. But suffice to say that the Nizam of Hyderabad had imported arms and got arms smuggled into his state to fight the Indian army, which he knew was going to attack. And when the Indian army attacked, most of the Razakars, who were temporary soldiers, part of a private militia, ran away with the arms and they stored them in their respective villages. And these
Mhm.
arms were subsequently brought into the black market. So these people actually made multiple trips to Hyderabad and piece by piece, they got the arms and ammunition from there. However, with the limited resources available, to fight these 350 plus fully armed soldiers who has 10 guns, Bren guns, and 3 submachine guns, machine guns also, light machine
Right.
guns also. To
Right.
fight all this, they had only 5 rifles and 3 pistols to begin with. That is all they could buy with what they had, and a limited
Yeah.
amount of ammunition. Yet, with
Hmm.
that, they decided to go ahead and they conducted the first attack with only 5 rifles, 3 pistols, and just 8 or 10 people who had ever fired an
Ever
armament in
before.
their life before.
Yeah. That's actually so fascinating. And I like what I want to know is that apart from arms, I'm sure there would be a lot of planning also which would have
Oh,
gone
yes,
behind
yes.
it. So, what was that all about?
See, एक तो होता है ना, there is something called bravery and there is something called bravado. Bravado is कि तैश में आके कुछ कर दिया.
Right.
Yeah, मैं जाके कर लेता हूँ. That kind of bravery.
Hmm.
This was not
Yeah.
that. This was bravery at its coldest best because everything was planned out. I mean, they even went to the extent of carrying out a complete intelligence operation within the territory of Dadra and Nagar Haveli. When some of the youths from Pune actually went, one went as a bangle seller, 2 people went as incense stick, agarbatti sellers. They moved all over the area and they mapped out the police stations, the strength of the police station. They mapped out the communication lines, where were the telephone lines going from, what roads were to be taken, what rivers were to be crossed, and they made detailed maps. And one of these maps was made available to me, which is published, which is part of the book now.
But
So they made
yeah.
these maps. And when they made these maps, they realized that they didn't know a thing about the capital, which is Silvassa. So one of the
Hmm.
ladies, one of the wives of one of the volunteers there, went there dressed as a tourist. And she took pictures of the Silvassa police post. And these pictures
Okay.
were brought back. Then when they realized that the police post is huge, they wanted to know what is inside. So 2 of
Right.
them went as beggars and begged in the street square. And when they were arrested for beggary, they went inside and drew pictures of what is inside the police post. So by the
Yeah.
time they entered the first volunteer entered the territory to attack it, they had a complete idea about where to go, what to face there. So that was one part of the preparation. And the second part of the preparation was that they actually set up a local contact network, which is like any military campaign. As General Tiny is here online, I see he would probably agree with this, that a military campaign is already always planned with great degree of detail. So this detailing was available to them. Sudhir Phadke and his wife Lalita Bai Phadke, who went dressed as a student, they conducted a musical program on the border of Dadra and Nagar Haveli, invited all the prominent citizens of Dadra and Nagar Haveli, and after the program was over, confided that they were going to do such a thing and enlisted volunteers. So now
Hmm.
they had uh, intelligence about the area. They had
Yeah.
a local support network, but they
Thing.
had
Yeah.
only 5 rifles and 3 pistols. But they had like jigra, and that is what actually matters.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, what about the actual battle? How long did it take? And there was this firecracker incident also, which you have mentioned in the
Yeah,
book. So
yeah,
that
yeah,
also
it's there. See, actually,
share
the
that.
whole planning to liberation, the liberation happened on 11th of August 1954, and the planning started in March. So the entire episode of the book took place between March and August 1954. Just a couple of
Okay.
months it lasted. The
Yeah.
actual battle lasted only a couple of days because the rest of the preparation took time. And when they went in, they actually started with some small police stations. So they captured a police station called Naroli, where there were only 9 policemen. There were 12 of these guys. So they went
Mm.
in. Of course, the policemen were fully trained and these guys were not. So it's not underrating their importance. But they started with a small police station. With great bravery, they attacked it from 3 sides, liberated it, arrested the policemen, took the rifles, moved on to Piparia, moved on to other small police stations on the way, and finally landed up at Silvassa, which is the capital. When they
Okay.
were this particular attack was going on, they kept cutting the communication lines. So the Portuguese captain, the administrator called Captain Fidalgo, who was in Silvassa, got scared. He got the feeling that there's a huge force which is attacking them. So therefore, what he did was that he asked all the soldiers who were there in all the surrounding police posts to come into Silvassa and take positions in the Silvassa police station itself, which was the police headquarters itself. And he ordered that the front of the police station should be covered in a wall of sandbags which went up to 16 feet high, with just
Mm.
small apertures for the rifles to come
Right.
out of that. Now, when these people actually reached close to Silvassa, they got the information because some of the soldiers inside were also sympathetic to their cause. So through them, they got the information that there are about more than 275, 300 soldiers inside, and they're armed to the teeth. So they realized
Right.
that with their rifles and pistols and with just 10, 12 people knowing how to operate them, they would not be able to attack them frontally. They would have been cut down in seconds. Even a minute would have been too much for them to last. So on that one day, on the 31st of July, 30th of July, two of them, Rajabhau Wakankar, who was their leader, and another person called Appa Karmalkar, these two went back to Pune. And going back to Pune, they went from RSS Shakha to RSS Shakha, from Akhada to college hostels, and told boys there कि हम देश का कुछ काम कर रहे हैं, आपकी जान भी जाने का खतरा है, एक दिन का टाइम है, और आपको घर बगैर बताए चलना है, आप लोग चलोगे क्या? And can you imagine, more than 100 students volunteered. So these volunteers were got to site to Silvassa. But what do you do with 100 volunteers who have never fired a firearm in their life, who've never used anything except a lathi probably? Some of them had axes, one or two had swords, but almost nobody had ever been in any kind of fight or battle. So what do you do with these guys? So therefore they invented a huge ruse. What they did was that they got Diwali firecrackers, and they
Right.
divided these 100 people into 4 companies and surrounded the entire Silvassa police post. And each was headed by a person carrying a pistol. And they were instructed that the moment the leader fires the pistol in the air, you will burst these firecrackers in the canister, which gives out a huge doom. And you'll start shouting slogans. So before the actual attack took place, all that happened was these 110 people around with their 4 leaders started bursting firecrackers and shouting at the top of their voice. So when this entire Shor Saraba started, the captain thought that there is an army with unlimited ammunition which is attacking us. Because after all, which army can afford to keep firing in the air at random all through the night? So he got scared. And he took 175 of his best people with the best arms and went across the river that ran behind the Silvassa police post and stood on the other side, leaving only 75 soldiers here. Now, yet there are 75 soldiers, and these people are only 12 who have ever fired an arm before. So these 12 who knew how to fire arms took their arms and climbed up a fire escape, went up to the roof, from there jumped down to the first floor and attacked these people from behind.
Right.
And one of them opened the door of the police station, and all these 100 who were bursting firecrackers started shouting slogans and rushed in through that. So these 75 soldiers were scared that a huge army had come and they surrendered. So Silvassa was liberated. So that's the role of the firecrackers. And that's the capital that was liberated. Though what happened to the captain is another story, that the captain observed that there was no army attacking them. They were just a bunch of boys and hardly anybody had any arms. So he decided that he would attack the next morning, cross the river and massacre all of them and take the area back. Now these people, the ones who knew how to fire arms and ammunitions, decided that these volunteers, who were also joined by volunteers from the Azad Gomantak Dal by that time, who were Goan freedom fighters who had come and established base in India, and all of them together, they took positions on the other side of the river, fully determined that they could die the next morning. But they said, कुछ भी होगा तो इसको नदी पार नहीं करने देंगे. जब तक हम जिंदा हैं, जब तक हमारे अंदर किसी प्रकार की जान है तब तक. So they stood on this side. They would have been massacred. I mean, there's no question. 22 odd boys against 175 soldiers, there's no competition. But
absolutely.
Luck intervened and it rained heavily that night. And the river was in a state of a flash flood. So the captain couldn't cross over. And it kept raining for 3 days. So not being able to maintain his position on the other side of the river in the open, he retreated and took up position in a place called Khanvel, which was about 12 kilometers away. Which the advantage was that the police post was on a hill. So he knew that if he fired, he would be able to fire at these people and these people's firing would not reach them. Yet, despite knowing this, these 12, 13, 14 people, by that time maybe 18 or 20, see, since these are memoir-based stories, the exact numbers sometimes vary, but 20 odd people actually chased these 175 people right up to Khanvel, surrounded that police post and fired at them. Now look at the courage. मतलब 20-22 लोग 175 लोगों के पीछे भाग रहे हैं और उनको चेस करके उनको फायर कर रहे हैं. But when that firing went on for one day, they realized that they had limited ammunition and their bullets were not hitting the mark. So once their ammunition was exhausted, they knew they would be killed. Therefore, they went into the jungles of Silvassa. That's another story. There were some tribals. That area consisted of primarily Varli, Konkana and Dondia tribals. These tribals were the one who were bearing the brunt of the oppression of the Portuguese. And they had fought against the Portuguese under the leadership of the Communist Party and one lady called Godavari Parolekar, but they had been dispersed by the Portuguese because Portuguese उनको कुछ समझते ही नहीं थे ना. तो इसीलिए जब उन्होंने threaten किया कि we are going to attack you, these people just fired at them, and some of them died and they dispersed. So they were at a state of low morale. But these volunteers actually went to a lady called Jetrubain Ghoom, who was the chief of the tribals there.
Okay.
And on a horse, their representative and Jetrubain went from village to village, telling the tribals, this is the only chance you have of throwing the Portuguese away. If you don't throw them away today, it is never going to happen. Therefore, come and join us. So people came out of their villages and their houses and their huts, and they got with them, tir kaman, pellet guns, licensed rifles, whatever they had, they got out.
They had at that time.
Yes. So they all came out. And since they are locals, they knew from where to fire so that the firing actually enters the police post. So they took up places around the police post at higher levels, on a tree, on a church, on a building, and fired into the police post. Now, multiple things happened, but at the end of this attack, the Portuguese surrendered. They retreated into Indian territory. They were arrested and deported to Mumbai, and the entire area of Dadra and Nagar Haveli stood liberated on the 11th of August 1954. That's the entire battle, how it was fought. The details are there, of course, in the book. It's a fascinating story, and I really request people to pick it up, not because it's my book, not because it's a book, but because it should be done as a tribute to the people who fought this uneven battle and won. So that's how the battle took place.
Absolutely. And their courage indeed liberated Dadra and Nagar Haveli. But I had this question that why after liberation, it was still not a part of India till 1961.
Yes.
So why did it happen?
Yes. 7 years it was not a part of India. Because the moment the battle of liberation happened, there was a victory rally on 15th August 1954 in Silvassa. And that day the administrator, the head of the Azad Gomantak Dal, whose name was Vishwanath Lavande, announced that we are not here to rule you. We are here to hand over power back to you because we want to fight the Portuguese in Goa, Daman and Diu. So we are going away. You take over. And they organized the sarpanches of the 72 villages of Dadra and Nagar Haveli, and those sarpanches elected a Varisht Panchayat, a few select sarpanches, and they handed over power to those panchayats with one person staying back as an administrator and one as a police chief. And they petitioned the Indian government and said, please come and join, take us into your country. But the government of India, led by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, refused for political reasons, international political reasons, into which you can read the book. It is not necessary to go in right now. Now, they were in a fix. Portuguese have gone, the liberators have gone, and the Indian government is not coming in. So what happens to this area? So the fact which is so stunning and surprising is that for 7 years, from 1954 to 1961, when the accession finally took place, this area was run as an independent country. So for 7 years, we had 3 countries within India. We had the Indian Union led by the Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and Parliament. In Parliament, there was the Portuguese-dominated area of Goa, Daman and Diu. And there was the free state of Dadra and Nagar Haveli, which is an area of 72 villages, 20,000 people, and 550 square kilometers, which existed as a country. Why it took 6 years or 7 years for it to assimilate is because meanwhile Portuguese went to World Court and they filed a case against the Indian government and they asked for permission to send their army from Daman through this landlocked area, the Indian territory, to take their areas back under their control. And the government refused, and this was a case which went on in court. This court finally, the World Court ruled in India's favor in 1961. And as soon as the World Court ruled in India's favor, the government of India passed the 10th Constitution Amendment Act, and as a part of that, made this into a union territory of the Union. So that's why it took 7 years.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is that because the World Court ruled in India's favor, because the world community did not help the Portuguese, in this case of Dadra and Nagar Haveli, the Indian army could finally the Indian government could finally send its army into Goa, Daman and Diu in December 61 and liberate it. If this had not happened, if the World Court case had not happened, probably Goa, Daman, Diu also would not have happened.
Yeah.
So this is the whole background why 7 years it didn't happen. And the amazing thing of Dikhen, it's a full country. They have their own currency. They are using Indian rupees. They have their own administration. They have their own police. They have their own postal system. Everything is on their own. And they are carrying out developmental activities. Schools are being built, roads are being built, revenue is being collected. land reforms are being initiated. All this happened for 7 years, and they managed very well for themselves. But no one ever said कि हमको आजाद देश रहना है. Everybody said हम हिंदुस्तानी है, हमको हिंदुस्तान का ही हिस्सा होकर रहना है. And they kept petitioning the government, जल्दी से ले लो, जल्दी से ले लो, जल्दी से ले लो. And finally it happened, and the area was liberated.
Great, great, wonderful. It's such a fascinating history that we
I
have
still have
now.
goosebumps when I narrate the story. This must be the nth time I'm telling the story. But every time I narrate, I get goosebumps. I mean,
Yes,
it's such a
yes.
story. It's such a story.
That's true. That's true. And there is one very, nice incident and a very unique one also, which you have mentioned in your book. That is about the Prime Minister for a day,
Ah,
which
yes,
is
yes,
which has never happened ever
yes,
before.
yes,
So
yes, yes.
coming to that question, before that question, there is one question from General Tiny. Hello, sir. So
Yeah.
he is asking you that what was that one reason that brought these young men together as a group determined to risk their lives other than desire for independence?
It was not desire for independence, General, because they were already living in independent India. The people in Pune, the group from Pune was actually already living in independent India. The ones who had fled from Goa, they formed the Azad Gomantak Dal, which was a militant organization existing within Goa. But these people were persecuted there, so they ran away and set up government in Belgaum in India. So they were also living in an independent. It was not desire for independence. It was a desire. It was a great burning desire for ensuring that every citizen of the country is independent. It's that jazba which was there for the country. They felt
Right.
they were believers in this whole concept of Akhand Bharat. But their argument was that Akhand Bharat की बात तब करेंगे ना जब हर citizen जो भारत का है वो आजाद होगा. So it was just a love for the country, and it is nothing else. It's just that. And I'm sure Dhanil Saab, who can understand this concept better than you do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. And now coming to that incident of Prime Minister for a day,
Prime
which
Minister for a day. Now,
has
this was a
just got a
technical problem. Yeah, this is such a funny thing. Mind you, the book starts. You've read the book. The first chapter, the first page of the first chapter is this incident, and the last one is also this incident. That's how I kind of connect the dots. It goes into flashback there. So the story is that when the 10th Amendment to the Constitution was passed, and the instrument of accession was to be signed between Dadra and Nagar Haveli, the country, and India, the country. The question was that the Prime Minister deputed somebody to sign on behalf of the Indian Union. But now, who signs on behalf of Dadra and Nagar Haveli? There is no Constituent Assembly, there is no Prime Minister, there is no person elected over there. They are just a group of sarpanches who have got together and started administering the territory informally. So they wanted something which was foolproof and legally admissible later on. So therefore, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru deputed a civil servant, IAS officer, by name of Mr. K.G. Badlani, who resigned from the civil services, went to Dadra and Nagar Haveli. The Varishta Panchayat elected him to the post of Prime Minister for one day. So on a previous evening, he took oath as Prime Minister. His only task was to sign away the independence of his country.
right.
So he was Prime Minister of Dadra and Nagar Haveli, but for that one night, in terms of protocol, he was the equivalent of Jawaharlal Nehru. Jawaharlal Nehru was the Prime Minister of one free country, and Mr. K.G. Badlani was the Prime Minister of another free country. So they were equal in protocol. So on
Right.
behalf of that country, next day morning, he signed the instrument of accession, merged his newfound country into India, and went back to being a civil servant. So he was Prime Minister for a day, given only the task of surrendering the independence of his country. This has never happened before, it will never happen again.
Yeah.
This is a
Yeah.
unique story which actually happened. So that's what actually brought the whole thing to a close.
Absolutely. And there are so many fascinating, interesting facts that you are sharing about the book, about the history also. And we can go on and on, but we have the time constraint as well. So we have to restrict to that also. So moving away from the fascinating book to the end of the session, what is it that you would like to leave as a takeaway for our viewers? And I also want to know about your philosophy of life.
With all the build-up that was given to me before the Facebook Live that actually happened, I guess it is very important that I sound intelligent. So I'll do my best to do that and try to act intelligent and give you a decent enough answer.
You
There are
don't
many
have to.
facets. All of us have philosophies of life. We just don't know them very rightly. We know them in the back of our mind, but we have never really kind of put them down in one sequence and understood that this is what we want to do. So all of us work from some philosophy or the other. But I've been reading a lot and I've been thinking very deeply about how I want to conduct my life. And it has led me to uh, have certain tenets which I follow. The primary tenet which I keep speaking of at most places is that I believe that when life calls out to you, you should say yes to it. You should never say no. If something is going
Right.
to happen, you get an opportunity. Don't think कि नहीं करेंगे कैसा होगा क्या कोई देखेगा तो क्या होगा क्या करेंगे तो क्या होगा. Let's just go ahead and say yes and try it out. So
Yes.
whenever an opportunity offers itself to do anything new, for instance, my cricket commentary happened like this. My theater life started like this. Somebody asked me, play में role करोगे हाँ करेंगे. Commentary करोगे हाँ करेंगे. Try तो करते हैं. So even things like snorkeling, parasailing, all these are things which I did because somebody said, "Ki, would you like to do it?" And given an opportunity, I thought, let me try it. Why should I sit back? So I believe in saying yes to life because I believe that when you say yes to life, life says yes to you. You say no to life, life says कोने में बैठ जाए यार हमारे पास बहुत लोग हैं लाइन लगा के खड़े हैं उनको देते हैं जो देना है वो. So you've got to say be positive and say yes to things that happen to you and you will be exposed to a whole lot of experience. That is one. The second tenet of my life which I firmly carry with me is that I believe in being accountable to myself for all my actions. I mean, I don't believe in making excuses and saying कि यार वो नहीं हुआ तो क्या हुआ उसने ऐसा नहीं किया इसलिए नहीं हुआ उसने वैसा नहीं किया उसलिए नहीं हुआ. The moment something adverse happens to me or something good happens to me, particularly the adverse things, I sit down and think, what was my contribution to this? What did I do wrong that this happened to me? And what is my role? And what can I do better next time so that this doesn't happen to me again? So I believe in being answerable to myself and being accountable for my actions and don't make excuses. This is the second. And another very interesting one which came out today morning, which I, I'm actually hesitant to say this because it's very deeply sentimental and it could be seen as bragging, but it's something that happened. I'll narrate an actual incident to you. Now, I am also a corporate public speaking coach, and I used to run a foundation called the Speak to Change Foundation, where we taught
Okay.
people the art of public speaking. Now, there I encountered this. There are many people who were coached by me in this, and there was one Simi Nanda, whose video clip I got this morning in Josh Talks, where she talked about my interaction with her. So this is the
Okay.
interaction I'm narrating. So she was a woman who, at the age of lady who, at the age of 55 had gone through a very messy divorce. She had lost all her money, her business had been taken away from her, and she had discovered that her son was gay, which she was not able to accept at that point of time. So she came and
Right.
joined the organization, and she was supposed to give her first speech. So came and asked me, मुझे बहुत डर लगता है बात करने से, on what topic shall I speak first? So I said, speak to anything that is speak from the heart. Whatever is going on in your heart at the moment, you come out and speak of that. So she said, then I will speak about my trials and tribulations, and I'll speak about my son coming out of the closet as a gay and my not being able to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
So we agreed upon that. She prepared a speech. She went up to deliver the speech, and when she started speaking, she got so emotionally involved that she burst out crying. When she was standing on the stage in front of 100 people crying, uh, most people started telling her कि अच्छा आप आके बैठ जाइए थोड़ा ठीक हो जाएगा तो दोबारा जाके बोल दीजिए. But somehow on an impulse, I thought this woman deserved that moment and she deserved to assert herself. So I got her from the audience, I walked over to the stage, got on it, and held her tightly till her crying subsided. And I just told her कि कोई बात नहीं हो जाएगा. I just kept on holding on to her and gave her a glass of water. She started again and then she smiled at me and very proudly said, I am the proud mother of a gay son. I have no regrets about it. That is when her whole problem really came out in the open. And once she found
Right.
people also crying there in the audience, she got so emotionally involved that she went home, called her son, and she told me the next day that she and the son had a 3.5 hour conversation. The barriers broke down, and today the two of them run a very successful business together. She narrates this story wherever she goes. On Josh Talks, she narrated it and sent me a clip yesterday. She narrated it on Shark Tank when she was, seeking funding over there. So I got so sentimental about it in the morning. I said I didn't do anything unusual, anything extra, anything that any human being would not have done. I just
But that small act of kindness which you did at that time has actually transformed her whole personality, her life only.
I, I didn't see it as doing anything unusual. It was the most natural for me. आपका कोई रो रहा है तो आप उसको जाके पकड़ लोगे उसको बोलोगे यार चुप हो जा. That's all I did. I didn't do anything extra over above that. It's not a huge act at all. All it required was me to get over uh, that hesitation कि ये लोग क्या कहेंगे. वो लेडी
Yes.
को मैं जानता ही नहीं हूँ उसको मैं 5 बार मिला हूँ जिंदगी में मैं उसको पकड़ के हक करूंगा तो क्या होगा. I got over all that and I did it. From there, the lesson that has come in is, and this has been consistently with me for a while, and I would request all of you to take that as a takeaway because it's a universal truth, which is that when you want to criticize someone, when you feel like snapping back, because for the simple reason that you are upset that day or you don't like what that person has done, take a break, pause. If you feel like being indifferent to somebody, take a break, pause. But if you feel like being kind to someone, please don't hold back.
Yeah.
Walk over, hug that person, speak words of kindness because you don't really know what is at stake. You don't really know what lives you are going to touch and what ways. Today it
Yeah.
came back to me as a blessing, as something which touched my heart. And you can see I'm still like totally senti about it. That a small act of kindness can actually change that person's life completely. I don't
Absolutely.
think I did it. It is the Lord which gave me that inspiration that day. Bhagwan agent banata hai. He doesn't come down everywhere with Shankar Chakra Gada to do it. He sends somebody and tells him ki jaake ye karke. I did that because that's what I was told to do that day by the powers on the top. But mind you, that man up there, that woman out up there tells all of you. So when you get this message, please act on it. Small acts of kindness can change lives. And it is our responsibility to do that when we can, where we can, to the best of our ability. Thank you so much.
That's so beautiful. And today morning only, I have just read this quote from Khalil Gibran that kindness is like snow. So, and it beautifies everything that it covers. So I started the day with that beautiful quote, and I'm ending the day, almost ending the day with the same, emotion and with the same beautiful words that kindness is greatness actually. So one must implement that and make it a part of a life, make it a way of a life, a way to live life. That is so very important. And thank you so much, Nilesh sir. Like, you have the power to change lives with your gestures, with your words, with your humbleness, with your kindness. And of course, your books are making a lot of difference in the world. They are making a lot of difference in lives also. And you yourself as a human being are so special, that brings so much of, warmth, positivity, and light all around. And thank you for bringing light to our show as well today, to our
Thank you,
anniversary.
Shweta. Thank you. Thank you. I'm blessed to be on Story Scrapers, where there are friends like you, Sarita Shukla, and others who connect with me for who I am and not for what I have done. So, what I have done will fade away. What I am will hopefully stay the way it is. And therefore, I hope to stay friends and I hope to keep coming back on many more shows in the future as long as your audience will have me. Thank you so much. Delighted.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. And thank you so much to our lovely audience who have been so generous to spare time for us and have been so, interactive throughout the session. Thank you so much, audience. Thank you so much, sir. Have a great time. Have a great evening. Have a great year ahead. And same goes for our audience as well, that have a great, great life and great year ahead. Thank you so much for connecting with us. It was really great evening and see you all very soon. Till then, keep smiling and stay safe. Thank you.